So, in yesterday's Horror Month 2020 video, I talked about a horror film that was released in 2019 and later received a near 3-hour director's cut on Blu-ray. And today, I'm going to be talking about a horror film from 2019 that later received a 3-hour director's cut on Blu-ray, and that is Dr. Sleep. I can't believe I just did that. I'm going to keep that in for free. That was just brilliant. See, I was doing that intro a couple of times. I thought it was kind of funny. You know, I got a bit of a big head over it. That'd be a bit funny intro. Look at that. The egg on my face there when I held the fucking back up. What a twat. It stays in the video. Dr. Sleep. There we go. So, but it is funny though. That it was very strange to me that you had these two films that came out in the same year that to me are two incredible horror films. And they both got a director's cut that neared 3 hours in length, and both of them were better than the theatrical cuts. And this one is actually bang on 3 hours. So Midsummer was 2.5 hours, as was Dr. Sleep when it came out in the cinemas. And then Midsummer got a 171-minute director's cut. Dr. Sleep went the full 180. So this is directed by Mike Flanagan, I believe. Yes. And this is a strange one because it is a sequel to The Shining, Stephen King's book, which is called Dr. Sleep, that came out a few years ago. It's a fairly recent sequel novel from Stephen King. But this film is also a sequel to the Stanley Kubrick film The Shining, which is quite different from Stephen King's book The Shining in a number of ways. And so you have this weird kind of quasi-sequel to both that forms its own kind of thing. And that did have the stamp of approval from Stephen King himself. When the trailers came out for this, I was not really that interested. I love Ewan McGregor, so I felt like I would probably see it at some point. And hey, this was back in the days when me and Connie went to the cinema all the time. We'd see all the big releases, and now it's nothing. But you know, so I think it was just kind of we'll go see it. It's the new film that was coming out this week. We went to TGI Fridays, I think. Had a nice meal, then went over to see Dr. Sleep in the nice super screen, nice comfortable seats, and this would be just a fun 2-hour horror movie, and let's see how they fail to come anywhere close to Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. And while I'll still say that Dr. Sleep doesn't come any close to Stanley Kubrick's The Shining, it doesn't half come close. Stylistically, maybe not, but even still, I thought this film was phenomenal. One of my favorite films of 2019. Completely blew me away. I just loved it. I really did. And this film, people say this a lot about movies, and it's kind of a weird descriptor to put on a film, but it felt like a novel. I guess that's just a way of saying that it's a film that really respects the characters, and it takes its fucking time. It doesn't rush things, and you just get time to breathe with these characters. You get time to live with these characters. Things get built up properly, and it's just executed so well that by the time you get to the end, you're fully invested in the end game, in the third act. And yeah, so this follows along from the story of The Shining with Jack Nicholson's son, Jack Torrance's son, Danny Torrance, played by Ewan McGregor as an adult. And Dan is going through a rough patch. Like he's dealing with alcoholism, and he's running away from his problems. And he eventually ends up settling in this town where he's helped by a man named Billy. I think it's Billy. And he turns his life around, basically. But through his ability, this shining that was given to him. I forget the guy's name now from The Shining. That's going to really bother me, because he was such a brilliant part of The Shining and such a great part of this film as well. But the man who kind of clues Danny in, and I forget the actor's name too. He's a great actor. That really bums me out, but I guess I just can't be bothered to go and find it out. Let's see if it even would say on the back cover. I doubt it would. There's not even a cast listing on the back here. But he has this, as it says in the back here, the extrasensory ability to shine. And it's this kind of telepathic ability. And Danny becomes aware of this. It's almost like a kind of a ghost in his room where he lives that can write on the chalk wall. And it turns out to be this young girl, played by Kylie Curran, whose name is Abra. which I do remember. I remember that because you think of Abracadabra, I suppose. But yeah, Kylie Curran, who plays this young girl Abra, one of my favorite performances of 2019. There's such life and kind of energy to it. You know, she's such a like sweet soul, and it's so like, I don't know, that when she smiles, it just lights up the screen, and then she gets drawn into this kind of this big chess game that's going on with this group of people who are preying on humans and their life force. Basically, this is led by the character Rose the Hat, played by Rebecca Ferguson, whose accent jumps all over the place, but we'll forgive her that because she's an incredibly memorable villain for the film. And she leads a group of people who are essentially immortal, not fully, but they've lived much longer than normal humans, and they do this by essentially just draining the life force out of people. So when they find people who can shine, and they have something extra, it's that feeds them for, like, you know, decades, but, you know, that sort of thing. I don't know the exact timeline or terminology, but, you know, you get the general impression that if there's someone who has that ability, they're incredibly valuable, and they can drain all of that stuff, and they can bottle it, and they can just live off it for a very long time. And so she basically becomes the kind of the prime target when they become aware of where she is. And so she kind of goes to meet Danny, and they kind of join forces, and he's very reluctant, but he then sees the threat of Rose the Hat, and then it all converges in a very familiar location. This is where the third act kind of goes and really plays around with the ghost of Stanley Kubrick's The Shining, and going to well, not going to that location because it doesn't exist, it was all sound stages, but recreating the world of the Overlook Hotel as seen in Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. And that's a great set piece, that final third act of the film. And what I love about this film is that it's a sequel to The Shining. So it's, you know, this is literally following on from the Jack Nicholson version. And we see Jack Nicholson's Jack Torrance, you know, and we see his wife, played by, I've forgotten her name too, my memory is terrible. But, you know, it's this, but what they did was, instead of doing the whole kind of very kind of trendy, you know, at the moment, visual effect trick of de-aging a famous actor, which, to be fair, I think Marvel is really perfecting that. If you look at some of the stuff that they did maybe at the beginning of that trend, not so much, but these days they've really nailed that down. I think Samuel L. Jackson in Captain Marvel was almost seamless, you know, and they've been playing around with that for a very long time, and it's been getting better and better. But instead of doing that, in Doctor Sleep, we have new actors playing them. In fact, Henry Thomas, Henry Thomas, who plays Elliot in E.T., plays Jack Nicholson in Doctor Sleep. And instead of leaning into it and you know, just going full on and you know, this is the new Jack Torrance now, they shoot him from a profile, which is a lot more effective. And they don't fully, like, it's almost like, you know, you don't show too much of the trick. You know, whereas the actress who plays the mother, you know, you see a lot more of her, but there's, I don't know, she seemed to have the spirit of that character. And the actress who played, I've forgotten, how can I forget her name? It's on the tip of my tongue, it really is. Damn. Wendy something? I don't know. Anyway, so I actually loved that choice, and I couldn't resist. I had to go and check it because it was like literally like I could feel my own fingers inside my head just peeling the skin back because I couldn't remember this fucking guy's name. Dick Halloran is the character. Scatman Crothers was the actor, and it was Shelley Duvall who plays Wendy Torrance. There we go. So instead of like doing a digitally de-aged Shelley Duvall or Jack Nicholson, or a digitally created Scatman Crothers, they just recast, and they found the perfect actors, I think. And then you get something like so the cast is great, but then you get something like Jacob Tremblay, who was in Room with Brie Larson, and he plays this young kid playing baseball, and he gets attacked and drained of his life force by this group led by Rose the Hat, and it's like his performance, it will raise the hair on the back of your neck. Like and apparently Rebecca Ferguson, when they were filming it, she had a bit of a breakdown there because it was so shocking how much this kid was selling the fact that he was being killed, and apparently he just hopped back up and just went to get a Coke, you know, like he was completely unfazed by what he was having to do. So he's a great young actor. in a very small role in this film. But yes, anyway, so going back to that original cast, like Dick Halloran, who's such a great character in The Shining, they bring him back because they can, and it works. And you actually get a little bit more of him in the director's cut in the scenes with you, well, the one scene I think with Ewan McGregor. But what The Shining does is it opens up those kind of it opens up the abilities for those kinds of scenes where you can now have Ewan McGregor as Danny Torrance speaking to the ghost of Jack Torrance in the Overlook Hotel, and it doesn't feel cheap, or it fits within that world of the kind of the ghosts and the kind of the spirit world. And there's a phenomenal sequence in which Abra kind of at first Rose the Hat is invading Abra's mind, and Abra fights back. Fucking phenomenal scene. Again, I love that young actress, Kylie Curran. I hope she goes on to do a lot of good stuff, because I think she has a bright future if her acting ability continues to grow, because she's just so good in this film. There's just such a wholesome presence that she has, and there's just a lot of fun moments when she kind of gives the bad guy her comeuppance, and I just love Rose's kind of, just when she realizes how strong Abra is, it's kind of a mix of admiration and, oh, I really need to get this one. Like, this is like an obsession that eventually it just spirals out of control because she cannot not hunt this girl down. I really like, I'm going way more in depth than I planned to, like the Midsummer video, but I really like I forget the character's name, but she's the girl who lures this guy into a cinema, and kind of I think she drugs him, and then she kind of does she bite his face, or does she puts two punctures in his cheek or something? I've forgotten the exact details, but essentially you get the sense that this is a girl who has been preyed on sexually and is basically like vigilante style luring in pedophiles and marking them basically. And she gets targeted by the group, not as someone who they will use and drain up, but someone who they have noticed is out and about, vigilante style, and doing things that they feel would be beneficial to their group. And so they basically recruit her and make her part of this kind of, again, it's not an immortal gang, but it's like it's this group of people who are living far beyond the lifespan of an ordinary human being, through ways in which they're kind of scarring their humanity, I think, by draining the life force from other people. It's very creepy, and I the way that it's portrayed is, when they kind of get the smoke out, and they're kind of just like a pack of dogs, just like hulking over this air and breathing it in maniacally. Like, it's just a really yeah, it's a kind of like a haunting, strange visual when they start feeding on the smoke and the life force of these people. Ewan McGregor is great. It always seems to happen when Ewan McGregor has a beard in a movie, especially a beard in a studio movie. You can tell instantly which shot is a reshoot because thankfully it doesn't happen throughout most of the film, but in the first 45 minutes of the movie he has a beard, and it'll be real Ewan McGregor beard, fake kind of furry reshoot beard, because Ewan McGregor has such a distinctive beard style. Like, it's very thin and straight. The hair is just very specific, and it was the same in the Star Wars movies. There'll just be shots where it's like, oh, that's very clearly a pasted on beard. Random thing, but it was something that I just could not see throughout the beginning of the film. Now, overall, I love the film. It has really good villains in there. It has fucking phenomenal acting, I think, underrated acting, in fact, and the story is so good. The character of Abra is what really makes the whole thing tick for me, because it just adds an extra layer. The Danny story is compelling enough, but then you throw Abra in, and it's kind of a reflection of himself, and now he is put in a different position. And I just love the dynamic that develops between him and Abra, and how that, again, converges towards the end of the Overlook Hotel. It's just brilliantly done as a story. It's executed wonderfully as far as the visual style of the film. There's some really cool moments, again, when Rose is kind of invading Abra's mind. She sits down in her trailer, and then we just see her body floating over the clouds as she's kind of searching literally for the location where Abra lives, so she can swoop down and invade her mind. And the way the camera is following her, gliding across the clouds, is just, it's like a mesmerizing kind of, jaw-dropping visual. And the character of Billy, I want to give a shout out to. It's nice to just see like just an inherently good person, who just makes you feel nice and comforted when you see them on screen and the good things that they do for people. He really helps out Danny, and I loved their friendship, which isn't really expanded on too much, but it's, it's he's just fully there for the ride. Like, he is just so supportive as a friend. And what the director's cut does is, it in a very small way, it gives you a lot more to Billy's character. I hope it's Billy now, because I've been saying that name quite a bit. But it's like a blink and you'll not hear it moment, which doesn't quite work, but you get what I mean. It's when Danny is in the kind of, I'm not sure if it's like an Alcoholics Anonymous group, or it's just a general kind of addiction kind of meeting, but regardless, he's there and he's talking to people, and another guy comes in and he's like, oh yeah, Billy was telling me about you and stuff, and it's a shame what happened to his brother, or something like that. Like, it's a shame he couldn't help his brother. Something, I don't know if it was a brother. It's been a few months since I saw the director's cut, but there's absolutely a line, and it's not in the theatrical version, and that just gives you everything you need to know. Okay, Billy had something where someone close to him passed away, probably because of addiction. It also turns out I was wrong about this one, because the line isn't there about his brother dying. It's just that his brother was doing badly and they've kind of given up on him, and that Billy tried his best, which is probably still very painful. Probably not as painful if his brother had died, but it's the same sort of idea. And so he's really dedicating his life now to just being almost on alert to help people. And that's, he recognizes Danny has a problem right away. He goes up to him, he initiates conversation, helps him out. And it's really heartwarming. And I love the extra little detail. And there's even just tiny little things in the director's cut. When he first meets Ewan McGregor, he says, yeah, I've seen that look before. Implying that I can see that what you're probably struggling with. And then he finds him a room and everything, and like, just as they're talking, at the end of the night, he says to Danny, he's like I said earlier, I've seen that look before. Now, I had to go back. In the theatrical cut, he doesn't say I've seen that look before, it's just not in the film. But later on, he still does say, like I said earlier, I've seen that look before. And, you don't really question it, because it's like, well, obviously they had other conversations that weren't on camera. But, with the director's cut, all these little snippets are now being, like, put back into the puzzle. And I had to just jump in here to say that I kept going on in the video about how the line is, I've seen that look before. The actual line was, I know that look. I know that's splitting hairs, but I felt the need to clarify it. And it is really an extensive director's cut. There are so many changes in the film. From the way that it opens, the chapters that come up on screen, which again adds to the kind of novel-esque feel to the film. New scenes that are like 2-3 minutes long, and but yeah, just micro details, even down to the scene where Jacob Tremblay is being attacked and killed by the group. There's like alternate shots of him screaming are used in the director's cut. There's a really good, I think it's on moviecensorship.org, that shows you all the change. I think there's like over 200 changes, something like that, different cuts, like, and it's not just adding stuff in, it's alternate takes and things, and just a really damn cool director's cut. And there's more with Jack Torrance at the end at the Overlook, and there's also this is really gonna bug me, because it was near the beginning with his mother Wendy. And I wasn't sure if I'd seen it in the theatrical version. It was something to do with that kind of the thing that's haunting him as a kid, which was the old creepy naked lady from The Shining, who's kind of still following him around. And there's something in the director's cut that I think maybe shouldn't be there, and I've forgotten what it is, but it essentially sets up something that you then get later on anyway, I think. That's going to bug me. I don't know. Yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe I'll try and find it and snip in a kind of alteration to this video. Probably not, though. Okay, I did find out that thing that I was talking about. I don't know where I'll edit this into the thing, probably close to that point so you have some sort of context. But what happened is, in the beginning of the film, young Danny, he walks down the hallway to the bathroom, and he's very trepidatious. He opens the door, and the old naked lady from The Shining, she kind of pulls the kind of shower curtain across with a smile on her face. And I think in the theatrical cut it ends there, and but in the director's cut she gets up and she walks out of the bath, and her feet land on the bath mat, and you see her in full view. And I just felt like it was just showing too much. you know. Even though for me, like in The Shining, the scary one, the only times I've ever really been scared by a film is just that old naked lady just fucking laughing, like just, oh, it was one of the most horrible things I've ever seen. Anyway, I just feel like there's something so much creepier about just the hand. It might have even just been the hand in the theatrical version. I don't have the two. Well, I do have the two films on the two cuts on the desk, but you know, I'm filming a video. The lights are set up. The microphone's set up. I'm not going to go downstairs and meticulously check through everything. But I seem to remember in the theatrical cut, it's a lot more subtle. And then in the director's cut, you then see Wendy go in and look down and see the footprints on the bath mat. And I felt like I didn't need to be there. It was creepier just with the hand, or just the suggestion that he was still being haunted by this this ghost, basically. And I believe that does get picked up again later on. Yeah, at the end of that childhood sequence, when he basically decides to deal with it. And that to me was a better way to do it. But now that I looked at it and looked at the differences, it's a very, very small kind of critique, I think, of that director's cut. And there was something else, because I was just looking up stuff. Yes, okay, just to correct myself, it wasn't over 200 differences in the director's cut. It's 118 deviations. And apparently the death of the baseball boy is a lot more violent by the theatrical cut standards in the director's cut. And I'd also forgotten that there was more of young Abra as well, so more of her backstory. I mean, she's a young kid in the film anyway, but like when she was maybe 5 or 6, discovering her powers, there's more of that. There's more of her father. Just more of stuff where you might have thought, would it be nice to see a little bit more of that explored, and you get it in the director's cut. So there we go. Just had to throw that in there, because again, it would have bugged me if I'd forgotten, because I brought it up anyway. But it was definitely, that was really the only thing that I thought, well, you know, maybe we didn't need that for the director's cut. But yeah, that was just like a very minor blemish where I just thought, well, maybe that didn't need to be there, because it works better in the theatrical cut. But, you know, just most like major dialogue scenes have new lines. It's again just adding lines in here and there, not like huge, you know, 10-second, 20-second addition. It's just like 1.3 seconds, another line in that conversation. So I think it's great that was it Warner Brothers who released this? I'm not sure. Yes, Warner Brothers. It's great that they allowed Mike Flanagan to do a director's cut, and to again, because this isn't just adding in a few scenes. This is like, well, I was going to say it's almost an entirely new cut. It isn't, but it is. It's almost from the ground up a different version, because you just get, again, there's so many different alterations. And as I was saying with Midsommar, it's rare these days that a director's cut is as extensive as the one we see with Doctor Sleep. So yeah, anyway, I'll leave it there. I think it's a phenomenal film. It's one that I'll definitely go back to again and again, though I'll probably leave it like a couple of years, because I really want to savor this one. It's just, something about it. I really think that what Kylie Curran brings to Abra as a character, and what Ewan McGregor brings to Danny as this kind of tormented character. Again, you have this kind of the innocence of youth and her excitement at her abilities that she has. And then you have this guy who is just so, you know, he's had a life, you know, he's had a really traumatic childhood, and he's just trying to deal with things and trying to move on, and he gets drawn back in. Just when he thought he was out, he gets pulled back in. And then you have this incredible villain in Rose. You have these memorable side characters, like some of Rose's kind of group members, and also Billy and so on. And then the other characters from The Shining, like Jack Torrance and Wendy Torrance and Dick Halloran, who pop up here and there. And just the nature of Danny being Dr. Sleep, in a sense, his kind of calling that he finds in the old people's home, and knowing when they're about to die, and offering them those kind of those moments before they pass on. I thought there's something really touching about that, and the way that it deals with death, and I guess you could say spirituality in that sense. Even towards the end, there's just a really touching note that the film kind of ends on towards the last 2-3 minutes of the film, that just really good stuff. I would love to see a continuation with Abra, if I'm being completely honest, whether that's a film or a book. I think she's a really good character, and just, yeah, so I think she ties the whole thing together for me, because it's great. Without her, you could still put all the pieces together with Danny and Rose the Hat and everything, and it would still really work. And at large, the story is about his kind of demons, and how he is going to essentially control his past, which is what he ends up doing as a kid. But then he ends up blocking that out with alcoholism. But, you know, the end game here is really for Danny to face his demons and to squash them, you know, once and for all. And Abra is kind of the reflection of, you know, of what he was in a sense, but hopefully something that, you know, wouldn't go as badly as he did when he was a kid, and the same kind of trauma and handling of the ability of the Shining as well. So it just, yeah, so she just kind of, it just ties it all together. There's more you can do. I don't know, it just feels really, I love that kind of the triangle plot there of Abra, Danny, and then Rose the Hat and her group, which we cut back to very frequently, so we really get like a full sense, especially in the 3-hour version. We get a full sense of everything, of every character, or every main character I should say, and what they want, and where it all leads to. So anyway, I'll leave it there. I'm rambling now, and I feel like I'm losing track of any kind of good thought here, but thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.
It's alright by me. Apart from the fact he throws cans of Carlin into a tree. Yeah, he's really cool. Yeah, he's really cool. But he's not quite as cool as you.